This is question 2 from the review. And question 2, all of my answer choices look very, very similar to quadratic formula kind of questions. So I would probably solve this using the quadratic formula. Now, remember that the quadratic formula requires that we have the equation equal to 0 before we can sub in a, b, and c. So I add 5 to both sides. So I have x squared plus 8x minus 14 equals 0. So then I have values for a, b, and c. So my a value would be 1 because there's an understood 1 out here. My b value would be 8 and my c value would be negative 14. So then I have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now that you have your formula, you have negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 14 all over 2 times 1. Now, careful here. Don't type it all in the calculator all at once, because if you look at your answer choices, they are still in radical form. They are still in fraction form, have radical. There's nothing that has been simplified into a decimal there. So I want to take this step by step. You can put the discriminant. Remember, this part underneath the radical is called the discriminant. You can go ahead and just put that part in the calculator. So 8 squared minus 4 times times 1 times negative 14. So that gives me 120. So I have the square root of 120 over 2. So negative 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 120 over 2, which would give me this answer choice here. Now, in all technicality, that's not completely simplified because I can simplify this radical. Remember, just quick review, square root of 120 is the same thing as 4 times this, or as square root of 4 times square root of 30, which would give me 2 square root of 30. And there's not another perfect square that would go into that. So I'm left with 2 square root of 30, which means I have negative 8 over 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 30 over 2, which means when I simplify that, that's gone. And this would simplify into negative 4. So technically my two solutions could be negative 4 minus square root of 30 and negative 4 plus square root of 30 if we were to solve it out all the way. Now, because of these answer choices, you are allowed to stop right there in this case. If you have any questions, post them below.